everyone, welcome to this week's video. I want to dedicate this teaching to the memory of Rabbi Moshe Kotlarsky, Moshe Yehuda ben Tzvi Yosef, the director of Merkez L'Inyonei Chinuch, the central educational and outreach arm of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, who passed away earlier this week and whose birthday is today, would have been 75 years old, passed away just shy of his 75th birthday. And Rabbi Kotlarsky was really one of a kind. He was the Rebbe's foot soldier. He was the person who was in charge of the expansion of Chabad. He was the one who would make sure that if there was a community that they felt needed a Chabad presence, that someone would come there. He was really the person that led the growth and expansion of Chabad after the Rebbe's passing, and even beforehand. He was really tasked with taking on this very important role of ensuring that every Jew, no matter where they are, has their Jewish needs met. I want to tie this into this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Bamidbar. Bamidbar means in the desert. We open up the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, and we start out with the census, the counting of the Jewish people in the second year after the Exodus. Hashem tells Moshe, you got to count the people. And the often question is, why the desert? What's this thing about the desert, the emphasis on the desert? We're going to tie it all in. But counting, usually when we count, and we have these large numbers. Oh, there's X thousands of people, and so on and so forth. But the truth of the matter is that to get to those large numbers, you have to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and each individual. And when the Rebbe thought about the Jewish people, he didn't just think about this big collective, these thousands of people, millions of people. He thought about each individual, each and every individual person. Now, the desert is where the Torah was given, the Sinai desert. And what is the significance of the Torah being given in the desert? Well, it's a well-known idea. I shared it with someone today, that the Torah being given in the desert means it doesn't belong to anyone. Anybody who wants has access to the Torah. It had been given in a certain city. You would say it belongs to that culture, to those people, to that milieu. By being in the desert, which is an uninhabited land, meant that everybody and anybody could claim ownership to it. Even the Jew in the desert, even the Jew that is far away and distant, you should know the Torah is yours. The Jew in Zimbabwe, the Jew in Cochabamba, Bolivia, and even a Jew in Curacao, Torah is yours. Which brings me to the story of Curacao. So this is a story Rabbi Kotlarsky told many times. I heard it from him. It's been written up on Chabad.org, but I'm going to share it here anyway. Rabbi Kotlarsky was in the office in Brooklyn, New York, and he gets a call from the Rebbe's personal assistant, Rabbi Chadakov. This is 1984. He says, Rabbi Moshe, the Rebbe wants you to go to Curacao immediately. Okay? If you're a chassid, and especially if you are the Rebbe's person responsible for all the far-flung places, he says, go, you go. So he took with him a young man, Levi Krinsky, and they got on a plane and went to Curacao. By the way, for those who don't know, Curacao is a Caribbean island. It's one of the Netherlands Antilles. And it has the oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. So they land. Where do they go? They weren't told where to go. They hail a cab and say, take us to the synagogue. Now, most times the cab drivers take people to this old synagogue. It's very famous. But instead, he took them to a little neighborhood where there was this tiny little shul. And they get there and they come out and there's someone coming out of there. And they approach this fellow and says, excuse me, the Lubavitch Rebbe sent us here. Can you please tell us where we can find other Jews? And the man almost fainted. Who is this man? His name was Chaim Groisman. Chaim Groisman lived in Curacao. I guess he had emigrated there, or his parents had emigrated there from somewhere in Eastern Europe. And he had been having some trouble. What was the trouble? The trouble was that his son Eli was being harassed in school. The school was a Christian school, and he didn't want to participate in the religious services. And he was being pressured by the school and by his friends, and was being bullied that he's not participating in all the religious activities. And he came to a point he didn't want to go to school. He was very, very upset. Now, this is a very small Jewish community. In the 80s, it was quite, fragile. And Chaim, his father, didn't know what to do. And he had gone to the shul to pray. He had had a dream that his mother had come to the dream in a dream and said, Chaim, if you ever have any trouble, seek out the Lubavitcher Rebbe. But he didn't know what, when, where. He's in Curacao in the 80s. It's not like he was, send an email. He went to the shul to pray. And as he comes out, he sees Rabbi Kotlarsky. Wow. And they had a whole discussion. They came to their house, and they met, and they encouraged him to send his son to New York to a summer camp. And then he ended up enrolling him in the school in Brooklyn. And it was a whole turnaround of his schooling and his Jewish observance. And it really invigorated the whole family. Chaim wrote a letter to the Rebbe thanking him for sending Rabbi Kotlarsky to Curacao to help him in his predicament. And he signed it from a small Jew in Curacao. The Rebbe wrote him back and said, thank you for your note, but I take issue with you calling yourself a small Jew. There's no such thing as a small Jew. Every Jew has a soul, which is a piece of God. And you're not a small Jew. And therefore, you should know you're here on earth, you have a mission, you have a purpose, and no such thing as a small Jew. Rabbi Kotlarsky was the person responsible for making sure that every Jew, no matter which desert they find themselves, should have access to the Torah, to the love of God, the love of each other, and the love of the Torah. And may his memory be a blessing. This week is Shavuos. Shavuot starts on Tuesday night. You're supposed to start the holiday after it is completely dark, because Shavuos is 7 weeks after the second night of Pesach. We count 49 days, and you can't really start the holiday till you have fully completed the count of 49 days. So unlike other holidays that we could start even before sunset, Shavuos starts at sunset, and we do Kiddush after nightfall, which is pretty late. We will be having learning at Chabad House starting at 8 o'clock, and then we will break for a short Mariv evening service, followed by Kiddush and a delicious dinner, followed by more learning and discussion. We hope you'll join us. In addition, on Wednesday, which is when we read the 10 Commandments, reenacting the giving of the Torah at Sinai and receiving the Torah to our lives, we will be gathering here. 10 o'clock we start service. 11:30, we encourage you to come. Bring the children, because remember, the children stood at Sinai. In fact, the Midrash tells us that when God gave the Jewish people the Torah, he asked them for guarantors. And they offered the prophets, and they offered the patriarchs and the matriarchs, and God said none of that until they offered their children. The children will be the guarantors of the Torah for the future. And God said, okay, we're ready to go. So make sure your children are there to hear the 10 Commandments and appreciate the fact that they are the future of our people. With that, I will wish you a good Shabbos.